Why am I not hearing anything? Okay. I think it's showing that we're recording, so we're ready to begin.
Okay, got it. Get this screen pulled back up. Okay, welcome everyone to the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged Business Meeting. We will now call this meeting to order. David Darm will do a roll call. We ask that commissioners on the Teams meeting, please remember to unmute your microphone, which is our new reality in the world. In addition, if you're on anyone on the telephone, mute your telephone while you're not speaking, or cell phone while you're not speaking, so that we don't get a lot of background noise moving forward. So with that, Mr. Darm, do you want to roll call?
Yes, if this real quick, I don't know if we're getting some. Oh, sounds like it stopped. Okay. All right, so I'll call your name. Please indicate that you are here by saying here. Chair Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Gray.
Here.
Commissioner Knight.
Here.
Commissioner Tellez.
Here.
Commissioner Willingham. I believe Commissioner Willingham said he would not be able to make it, so we have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great, thank you. As you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and join me as we give the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now would like to ask our commissioners and advisors to introduce themselves and the agency the advisor of what agency they represent. Please remember to unmute your microphone or phone. You got to press *6 to mute and unmute your lines as we move forward. So I'll start out in general. Phil Stevens, been on the commission for 3 years or so. Just got reappointed, matter of fact, yesterday to the commission. Live in Tampa, Florida area. I'm a transportation engineer by profession and a father of a 22-year-old with cerebral palsy who's actually with me. Jared's with me in the room today. Someone that's going to be using the transportation network for the rest of his life. So very, very interested in the work of the commission, and quite honestly, the results we get. I'm very much results oriented. So with that, Commissioner Gray.
Good afternoon. I'm Christine Gray. I live in Titusville, Brevard County. I've been on the commission for a few years. I'm interested in being on the commission because I'm a person with cerebral palsy myself. So I've had to use the different paratransit systems, and I have a son who is not disabled, which makes it interesting to try to use paratransit to get him places. So okay. That would be it.
Thanks, Commissioner Gray. Commissioner Knight.
Good afternoon. My name is Renee Knight. I am Vice President of Community Services for Elder Source. I live in the Jacksonville area, and I have been on the commission for over 2 years. And I have over 26 years experience working with seniors and senior programs. And as you know, transportation is a vital, important need for seniors back and forth to the doctors in all places. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Knight. Dr. Tellez.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Tellez, and I'm actually out of Miami-Dade County. I work at Baptist Hospital of South Florida. I'm a registered nurse, and I was just reinstated as well. I've been on the commission for about 3 years. I am the Director of Nursing Engagement and Retention. And I actually have an interest because we hire, we have a program that we hire persons with disabilities, and very interested because many of them had some trouble getting back and forth to work.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Phillips.
you.
Are there any advisors on the call today or in the meeting today?
Yes, Chairman, this is Liz Stutz, Florida Department of Transportation, statewide transit manager. And I have 39 years experience in public transportation. We work with the CTCs on providing rural transit services and agencies that serve seniors and persons with disabilities through administration of the 5310 program.
All right, thanks, Liz. And welcome to the meeting. Any other advisors?
Hi, Krista Carter here with the Department of Elder Affairs. I've been part of this for about 3 years, and I act as the advisor for the department to the Transportation Commission.
All right, thank you, Krista. Welcome. Any other advisors?
Ken Carroll, Agency for Persons with Disabilities.
Hey, Ken, welcome. Any other advisors in the meeting today? Okay. Well, let's move on then with the agenda. The primary purpose of today's meeting is to revisit the decision that was tabled at the February 16th of this year meeting item regarding the application of performance data to the final allocations of the Trip and Equipment Grant Program. It was agenda item 7, I believe, in the February meeting. So we'll move forward with that. This is, just a reminder, this is a public meeting and operates under Florida's Government and the Sunshine Act. Meeting is being recorded, and all verbal, written, and text, meaning anything in the chat box, feedback will be logged within the meeting minutes. We advise and remind commissioners on the webinar to not communicate privately, meaning the chat box. Everything needs to be spoken, if you will, with other board members in order to ensure that discussions remain in compliance with the Sunshine Act. For the public comment segments, we'll follow our typical format. The first public comment segment is intended for agenda items only, so please restrict that so that we can get the information we need before we move to the items. However, the second public comment segment, we welcome comments on any topic at that point in time. We have asked participants intending to speak in either of those public comment sections to submit a public comment form prior to the meeting and indicate, whether you're going to be on the Teams call or on the phone so that we can handle the logistics. We'll first call on the folks who have submitted the form, and then we'll go to the Teams meeting to people who have not submitted a form at that time but wish to speak. And then thirdly, we will, and again, indicate in the chat box if you would like to speak, during the thing, and then we'll move on to the telephone to see if anyone's there. Same thing if you've not submitted a card. We ask that when you put it in the chat box, you put your name, organization representative, and just your general county of residence. Kind of gives us an idea of where folks are. And all the public comment segments, both of them, speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. We'll give you a 1-minute warning when, if it gets to that point. We can go to the next slide, if you will. We'll now turn to, I think it's, I don't know if Debbie's going to give the overview on how to use the Microsoft Teams webinar. I know everyone's probably fairly familiar, but we may have some folks that may not be used to the exact layout. So
I think, Mr. Chair, we pretty much just, I forgot to take that out of the slides because we didn't know if we were going to do a tutorial, but basically anybody out there who is struggling, I think we all know the features about muting, unmuting, and camera off or on. But if you have any technical difficulties, please reach out to Elmer Melendez or Deborah Hall on our staff. They will be monitoring the chat box and seeing if there's anyone who needs assistance and also looking for any other kinds of feedback that we get. Remember, just as the chairman said, any kind of feedback on any of the discussion items will be taken as public comments, even in the chat box. So I think that's all we've got. I know, like the chairman said, we're also recorded. So everything that's being said here is a public record.
Teams, I know it varies, GoToMeeting and Zoom and everything else, but the top right-hand side, there's the chat box, there's the camera, the mic, and those sorts of things. So moving forward. So, okay, the next slide. So first, let's now call on speakers for the first public comments segment. Again, please restrict your comments in this segment to agenda items. And we'll go through the ones that submitted the request in advance. And then Julia Davis with Polk BLC that you have already indicated we'll get to you online, anyone else. So as I go through the list, and Director Dorm, if I missed someone, let me know. But I'm just going to go down the list you had. We did get a letter from the Health Council of South Florida, David Rice and Lisa Marciniak. I don't know if we want to indicate that for the record as well. It says, and I'll read it for the record. It's to David Darm, Executive Director, on behalf of the Health Council of South Florida and the Monroe County Local Coordinating Board for Transportation Disadvantage. Please consider this our formal request to utilize option 2 when applying invoice data towards determining allocations for the FY 22-23 trip and equipment grant funding. Option 2, as presented in the February 16 CTD Business Meeting, states, Option 2, only apply the first 8 months of fiscal year 19 and 20 invoice data, which is July 1, 2019 through February 29, 2020, which were not impacted by COVID-19. So we will enter that into the official record. With that, the first public comments card, I have Scott Clark with Hillsborough County Sunshine Line. Scott, are you on?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, great. Yep, you're coming in loud, clear.
All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Scott Clark, Hillsborough County. And I'm commenting on agenda item 7. Hillsborough County opposes option 2 and requests the commission to approve option 1. Option 2 may be well intended, but results in unfair redistribution of funds to mainly 2 counties. Option 2 reduces the funding of 38 counties by $742,000 and redistributes $497,000, close to $500,000 to 2 counties. The remaining $245,000 would go to the remaining 27 counties, with one of the counties receiving the lowest amount of $716 and the highest $58,000. In other words, 38 counties would lose $742,000 and 2 counties will gain close to $500,000 with option 2. Thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So just to make sure I understand, you are in favor of option 1 in Hillsborough County?
Yes.
Okay, correct. Thank you. Great. The next comment card we have is Robert Villar or Mia Marin, Miami-Dade Department of Transportation and Public Works. I don't know if one or both of you are on.
Hello, it's Mia Marin on behalf of Robert Villar. Yes, good afternoon. On behalf of Miami-Dade County Department of Transportation and Public Works, we would like to be noted for the record to be in favor of option 2.
Okay. Thanks, Mia. We
Thank
have.
you very much. I'm trying to get the hang of the technology.
Yeah, I know it changes almost weekly. Sometimes it. With that, Miss Virginia Whittington, Metro Plan Orlando.
Good afternoon, commissioners, and those who are joining. I'm Virginia Whittington. I'm the Director of Regional Partnerships with Metro Plan Orlando. Are you all able to hear me? I'm in my office, so
yeah, you're coming in. You're coming in great.
Okay, great. Thank you. As you just heard, you have 2 different counties with 2 different views on which option is best, and I think that is because of a couple observations I'd like to bring forward. Option 1 and option 2 is listed on your exhibit, but there may be a third option that the commission has, and that is an option to keep it at the current base level. And also what's missing is you're not given the benefit of knowing the current rate of funding so that there is an equal comparison to be able to note how much each of the communities will be losing out on. Also, I want to observe that the governor hasn't signed the budget yet. And information that's being included does not list the American Community Survey results. They're not included. So as hard as the commission staff is working, I think that there's another option that could be at the disposal of the commission, and that falls under your Rule 41-2 that gives the commission the flexibility to determine which year or relevant period of data is applied to these. And so with that, I can say that Orange, Seminole, Osceola County is very concerned with the amount of negative impact this will have to the funding that's coming to this area, and would request that the commission consider that third option of leaving the funding where it is currently. Thank you.
Okay, and just clarify, Virginia, you said leaving this, you meaning option 1 or option 2?
I mean, leaving, well, what you did last year, Commissioner, was to leave the base funding at 80%. And this year, bringing it down to 60%. My question is if there is an appetite or consideration for leaving it at the 80% instead of reducing it. And if we needed to go on record as supporting one or the other, we'll choose the lesser of two evils with option 1. But again, considering whether that option 1 or 2 could be taken off the table and look into a third option, which is to keep the base funding where it is.
Okay, thank you very much, Virginia. Next public comment card I have is Michelle Arnold, Collier Area Transit. Are you on, Michelle? Remember to hit the unmute. So Michelle, if you happen to join later, we'll before this segment ends, we do it. Otherwise, we could pick you up in the second public comment segment. The next one is Quentin Eastberg, Appalachia Regional Planning Council. Are you on, Quentin?
I am, Commissioner. I'm here. Can you guys hear me well?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Good. I want, for the sake of clarification, before I come in guns blazing, I wanted to clarify that the numbers in the agenda packet, are these total dollars, or are these pre-local match dollars? In years past, we've gotten a chart that includes the allocation, the local match, the total funding. So that's a question for commission staff before I move forward on that.
David, do you want to address that, or do we want to have that during the discussion, I guess?
I believe that does not include the match. If Elmer or anybody on the staff who are on the call want to clarify that for me, but I'm pretty sure that is just our state dollars going into the projections. And clarify, these are projections. They are not the final amounts. Well, obviously that's getting ahead of my presentation, but these are projections, yes. And I believe, but staff, if there's anybody who wants to correct me if I'm wrong.
You are correct.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Well,
so,
Quentin, I guess did that give you enough information?
Yeah. Sure. So going ahead with that, so this is the 90%, allocation. With that being said, as a planner for TD, I'm not going to side with either option directly. I just, for the sake of the commission, though, I do want to bring up a couple of items for consideration as it pertains to the region as a whole. We did have a significant weather event that happened a few years ago, Hurricane Michael, here in the Panhandle, that sidelined many of our CTCs for months, severely impacting their trip numbers as it relates to the formula and so forth. And we've started to see kind of a trickle with our numbers, some of the counties with their numbers, here and there as it goes down, as that pertains to the formula. You know, and I'm in no way any kind of legal counsel or anything like that, but I would almost be a little concerned looking at the policy, you know, of those of what would constitute the ability for that moving forward. You know, is it a pandemic, a global pandemic, a really nasty hurricane, you know, that knocks out trips only for a small little region that is still suffering, you know, the Forgotten Coast. So I'd be interested to consider that in our determination of how we want to move forward. Obviously, you know, I'm not going to side. My region is split 5-4 when it comes to counties receiving on option 1 or option 2, and I don't have a dog in the fight. You know, I don't provide trips, but I am a little, I'm a little reluctant, you know, with kind of the speed at how fast we're going through it, this process, and wondering if there's not a procedure that can be or needs to be put in place when it comes to enacting a chunk or a piece or a couple months here or there, omitting, you know, there are many other counties, a lot of counties were continuing to provide those services through a pandemic, you know, and things like that. And are they getting penalized for doing so? So just something to consider. I don't envy you commissioners in your seats today. I know it's going to be a hot button topic, so I wish you the best. But with that being said, those are just a couple of points I wanted to make. And on behalf of a couple of my, you know, CTCs, I think each of them would vote, obviously, for whichever was in their favor. So I'm not going to go ahead and throw that out there. So I'm going to stay politically neutral on that one. But with that being said, I'll give back the remainder of my time. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Quentin. Okay, next speaker I've got is Paul Strobus, Broward County Transportation.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Paul Strobus. I'm the Director of Paratransit Services in Broward County. Appreciate the opportunity to address the Commission about today's agenda item. Broward County supports the CTD staff recommendation in the agenda item, going with option 2. You know, I believe we all understand the COVID's impact. It hit us all in March of 2020. And all of us were impacted by it. The impact may have varied on the impact of our services. You know, one of the things that I heard in the last meeting was that, and even earlier in comments, that this money is going to unfairly go to 2 counties. And, you know, I don't know that that's absolutely true. If the pandemic had not hit, a lot of the services that we provided would have continued for that full 12-month period of time. And so, you know, the new allocation formula very well could have distributed the funds to those same dollar amounts to the counties. We don't know that. What I feel is by utilizing the 8-month data, it treats every county fairly under the new allocation formula. Using pre-pandemic services in this allocation formula treats everybody the same. We continue to operate both fixed route and paratransit during the pandemic, but made a safety decision to cease using bus passes to protect our operators and reduce the need for individuals to board using the front door. And so, you know, if the pandemic had not hit and those services were being distributed, you know, the number of reimbursable TD items in our invoices would have been much higher than what they would be if we use 12 months of data now. So, you know, I understand there's a lot of controversy on both sides of this, but, you know, I think the commission has to look at, there's a new formula in place. We have to live with the decision to use the formula. A lot of us had issues with how the formula was going to be applied using the invoice data, because in our case in Broward County, there isn't a mechanism for us to get credit for services that we provide to TD eligible where we overbill the invoices. And we cover those costs locally here in Broward County. By using the 8 months of service data in the invoices, it treats every single county equally, that we use our pre-pandemic service levels towards this year's allocation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Paul. The next one I have is on the chat box, Julia Davis, Polk County TPO.
Morning, commissioners and everybody else on the phone. I thank you for providing all of us the additional month to go look at this in more detail and come back. I am with the Polk Transportation Planning Organization, but I am speaking on behalf of the Community Transportation Coordinator in Polk County. Their preference is in favor of option 1. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Julia. The next one on the chat box is James Flaherty. Pasco, am I saying that right, James?
Close enough. It's James Flaherty. I'm
Flaherty,
the program
okay.
director with Go Pasco. We're in favor of option 1. We're opposed to option 2. We feel that the county is being penalized for continuing to conduct daily operations to ensure transportation disadvantaged people weren't abandoned in our rural areas, our less urbanized areas. Based on the breakdown, it appears that the Tampa, St. Pete, and Central Florida area are being utilized to subsidize Southeast Florida. And although everyone was impacted by COVID, our population didn't have the same choices that you have in other more urbanized areas. The decreased proposed funding will directly affect our ability to provide proper service, as we could definitely fund a full-time driver or dispatcher with the reduction in funds. So again, we are in favor of option 1. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, James. I don't have any other indication in the chat box or Director Darman, I don't know if you've got any other submitted public comment cards, but is there anyone else on the webinar that wishes to take advantage of this first public comment session?
Commissioner, there's another one in the chat, Mia.
She already spoke. She
Okay.
spoke earlier.
Hello, can you guys hear me? This is Michelle Arnold.
Yes, Michelle.
Yeah, I had signed up, but I didn't learn how to unmute my phone. I'm calling and representing Collier Area Transit, and can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Okay. If the only 2 options we're provided are 1 and 2, Collier Area Transit is in favor of option 2, as recommended by staff.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Anyone else on the webinar or on the phone? I'll go to the phone as well at this point in time. Remember to hit *6 to unmute. If not, then we will close out this public comment portion of the agenda and move on to the approval of the February 16th meeting minutes. Again, the commission convened our business meeting in Tallahassee on February 16th of this year. The draft meeting minutes were provided in the CTD Business Meeting package. Before we take a vote, are there any questions or revisions needed on the meeting minutes? If not, I need a motion to approve those meeting minutes. I hear no discussion. Can I get a motion?
Yes, this is Commissioner Knight. I make the motion to accept the approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Knight. Can I get a second?
This is Commissioner Gray. I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. The motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 16th, 2022 has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed to the approval of those meeting minutes? Okay, then the motion passes and the meeting minutes are approved. Next agenda item is the CTC designation for Citrus County. The commission is responsible for designating a community transportation coordinator, a CTC, to arrange transportation disadvantaged services in each county in the state of Florida. The planning agency is responsible for recommending a CTC for the service area. Today, Casey Dagenhart from Hernando Citrus MPO.
Yes.
Was it Dagen or Dagen?
Dagen.
Dagenhart from Hernando Citrus MPO will present her recommendation for the CTC of Citrus County. So Ms. Dagenhart, go ahead.
All right, thank you. The Citrus County Board of County Commissioners would like this approved, as well as the Citrus TDLCB and the Hernandez Citrus MPO backs up their desires of wanting Citrus Transit to continue to be the provider for Citrus County.
Okay. Commissioners, are there any questions about the recommendations, or? If not, then I need a motion to approve the CTC designation for Citrus County.
This is Commissioner Knight. I make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Knight. I need a second to approve this.
This is Commissioner Gray. I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. The motion been made and seconded for approving the CTC designation for Citrus County. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, like sign. With that, the motion carries. So thank you very much. As we discussed earlier, we move to the next agenda item. The purpose of today's meeting is to revisit the discussion we had in February on the application of performance data to the Trip and Equipment Grant Program for the upcoming fiscal year. As most of you know, the Commission redesigned the funding formula in Rule 41-2, which began implementation July 1, 2021. Each variable in the formula is based on data on population, public roads, and services that were reimbursed under the grant program, otherwise known as performance variable. During our February 16th meeting, the Commission was presented with two options to consider whether to apply the full 12 months, which is option 1, or just the 8 months that were not as impacted by COVID-19, option 2, from the performance year fiscal year 19 and 20. If you remember, commissioners, you heard some public comments then and today on these two options. What I'd like to do is ask Director Darm to provide a quick recap of the options, and then we'll have a discussion with commissioners at that point in time. And again, we're not revisiting the formula discussion that went through the process. It was, the methodology was approved. This is about the application of the data at this point in time. So with that, Director Darm, can you give us an overview?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
I know for you commissioners, you all pretty much know this, but for the benefit really of anybody in the audience who either missed out at the last meeting or needs a recap, I'll just go through this real quickly. So as Chairman Stevens had mentioned, the commission had approved, done a process back in 2020 to develop a new methodology, new funding formula. And as he had mentioned, there are 4 variables that you all as commissioners decided to agree to with varying weights of each of those variables. So what you see here on this chart, this table, that represents the 4 variables that are in the new formula, and that each of those percentages that you see next to each of those variables, that's how much was weighted, basically how much funding is going through it. So if $100 was distributed for this upcoming fiscal year total for the Trip and Equipment Grant, $5 would go to the TD population, $5 for centerline miles, $30 for performance, and then $60 for the base. The base variable is really the stability funding, and that I think that was referenced, I believe, Virginia Whittington's public comments. She was talking about the base variable. Just to clarify, the commission voted when we approved, ratified the rule development for the formula in 41-2. Y'all have voted based on the public feedback we received during those workshops to have a transition period for the first year of implementation. So the current fiscal year that we're in, that is the fiscal year 21-22, which ends on June 30th of this current year. We are currently in the transition period. So the base funding was weighted more at 80% because we wanted our systems to allow them to transition. Another key factor that I had forgotten to mention that just might be good to have on y'all's radar just to provide context. The other challenge that I did not think of mentioning, I think at the last meeting, was remember that we also did hold harmless when we were beginning to implement the formula. We hadn't implemented it yet, so some of our CTCs got some additional hold harmless funding while we were going through the rule development of the formula to kind of keep the system together. So some of the systems had that hold harmless, which we told everyone that was temporary. And then you had the base funding for the current fiscal year that we're in raised, but the legislature did cut our budget from various reasons, but our budget was cut for the current fiscal year. But a lot of our systems didn't experience quite the severity of losses because that base variable really was a cushion. And I'm explaining this to y'all because I think it's important when we're looking at the allocations going forward. Some of these may seem more drastic because of you have that combination of that base variable change. The good news is I'm happy to report that the legislature did approve an additional $2 million in our trip and equipment grant that's going to be distributed for the new fiscal year starting July 1. So we are actually going to be distributing more than we did the current fiscal year, even though those base variable and the other variables have changed weights. We will be distributing a little bit additional funding. I know it's not what a lot of us wanted. We wanted 4 million originally. However, the legislature decided to give us 2 million. So, that's what we're at. At this point, we are at that mercy because that has been approved by the legislature. Virginia was correct that it has not been signed by the governor yet. However, as most of you know, we do go through this process each year. Around this time, everything that we approve is contingent upon the governor's approval, of course. But this is a standard procedure when we come to budgeting for our local systems to get an idea of what their projected allocations will be. Oh, excuse me. So, okay, now that's just kind of giving you the context. Now, as it was also mentioned in the public comments, so the biggest contributing variable to changes from allocations is going to be the performance variable, that 30% now starting this new fiscal year. And that is based, as Paul Strobus had mentioned, that is based on the trips, miles, and bus passes that the commission directly reimburses. This does not include trips that are reported in the annual operating report or any other types of trips that are quote unquote sponsored by another agency. These are just the trips, miles, and bus passes reimbursed under the trip and equipment grant. And that was, by the way, a discussion that we did have multiple times during the formula development. We did have that discussion. Commission did agree to this approach. Now, as you see here, these are the numbers in this table that are based on comparing Alachua with Miami-Dade and the two options that we presented to y'all. So one of the things that you heard a lot from the public comments, that there seems to be when looking at the two options that we're considering, we're seeing the data somewhat skewed by three major counties, Miami, Palm Beach, and Broward. Now, the reason why that is because those three systems rely heavily, especially Miami-Dade, on bus passes. And during the pandemic, many of the transit systems were not allowed to charge a fare for those riders. So there was no fares being charged to fixed routes, which means there was no fare to subsidize with a bus pass. So as a result, these counties could not bill, at least for bus passes, during a good chunk of the pandemic, especially when it comes to Miami-Dade's case, where their system is completely reliant on bus passes with the grant, with our trip and equipment grant. You see why that county is experiencing quite a shift in option 1 and option 2. Those four counties. So in essence would be holding, 4 months, I apologize. So in essence, that would be holding those 3 counties harmless from getting penalized for the last 3.5 months or so when they were ceasing the bus passes during the pandemic. Contrary to that, on option 1 being all the 12 months, as you heard, you had systems that still delivered, though it might have been reduced services, they still did deliver trips and miles during those last 4 months. And option 1 would be, in essence, recognizing those systems and what they did during getting credit basically in their allocation for the upcoming year. Now the swings are maybe a little bit less intense for these other counties, because you're looking at it when you're looking at the 3 counties, the bigger budgets of Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami, and especially with the bus passes, those kind of weigh heavier.
Sure if this guy's in the CVS, but this GPS keeps taking me around the block.
If you're on the call, if you're on your phone, could you please hit *6 and mute? We're getting some feedback. Sorry, David, go ahead.
No worries. So that's just kind of giving you an overview of why you're seeing these swings really in particularly those 3 areas. I wanted to provide some context. As a commission staff, we did recommend option 2 in the keeping of consistency of a hold harmless kind of mentality, especially as the pandemic was no one's fault in our system. And as I mentioned earlier, we understand that the systems especially those fixed route systems, had no choice when it came to issuing bus passes. However, I want to mention also that we did do rescue funding. I think that has been, something that Quentin had mentioned about talking about hurricane relief. Well, when it came to the pandemic, at least, we did, as you all know, rescue funding, relief funding during majority of the time of the pandemic, which was largely going to some of those systems that were not able to bill us for bus passes. And I believe for a good chunk of that time, we were reimbursing about 47% of their allocation if they billed us for 0. So that's just something else to provide context to the discussion. Commissioners, you heard public comments on both sides. I say my philosophy as your staff director is to give you the best information, but it's not just our job as staff. You heard from the public, you've heard good arguments on both sides. I believe the takeaway from the February meeting was there was a lot of interesting philosophical debates about this. And so I'm turning it back to y'all now for considering what we recommend, but also consider what you're heard today from the public comments as part of your discussion. And I'll answer any questions you may have of me. But at this point, I think, Mr. Chair, it's up to you and the board members now what you would like to do.
Yeah, well, thank you, Director. One clarifying point, which was made at the February meeting, all the systems provided service had some of the more urbanized systems that didn't use the bus passes, as you said, but no one discontinued service. Let's put it that way. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that, moving forward, because I think I misspoke that in the February meeting. That was clarified there. So before we consider a motion, I would like to just generally, commissioners, to get your thoughts on, and again, the question on the table is not the formula. We've been through that process, so we need to focus on the data. Option 1 being used full 12 months. Option 2 using the eight months, at least affected by COVID. Moving forward. So with that, I'd like to, maybe roll call commissioners and get your feedback, any questions for Director Darm or staff at this point in time, just to kind of see where everyone's head is on this issue. To give you my opinion, I always like to use all the data just because it's there. I do recognize it's some strange times. Mr. Eastberg brought up a good point about there are other events that could fall into the same category of consideration. And I was in the Panhandle after Hurricane Michael doing restoration, so I'm very familiar with the devastation that was up there. The commission tries to accommodate with rescue funding and things of that nature. But there's no way that this formula can solve all that. I mean, that's going to be, you know, as things occur and they can, so, you know, generally I like the idea of using all the data that's available, whatever the condition is, and then, you know, accommodate, you know, with rescue funding and other considerations as you go forward. But I mean, again, this is unusual cases and I understand that. And I also understand that the numbers for option 2 look really huge for those 3, but you know, they have really big baseline numbers to start with. So percentage wise, it's not such a dramatic shift. So, you know, I guess I'm arguing both sides here, but I would like to, you know, everyone to get a chance to speak up on it. Commissioner Gray, do you have any thoughts on that, on either of the options?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it took me a minute. I'm so sorry. I'm leaning more towards option 1. Do you need an I mean,
Well,
I just
yeah, if you don't mind, you can, you know.
yeah, I just feel like option 1 gives more of the CTDs an opportunity to get something out of what they had to go through and out of what they potentially would have lost, even though I know some of the CTCs do things differently. So in other words, some use bus passes and most of them do not. I think it's Miami-Dade that uses the bus passes. So that's kind of why I'm thinking option 1.
Okay. Commissioner Knight, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, my thoughts are in line with Commissioner Gray. I looked at the data as well, and I think it was the second speaker, Scott from Hillsborough, when they started talking about all the things in option 1 and the 38 CTCs that are better with option 1. And looking at those, there are 2 that it's a 9% difference, over 9% difference if they go under option 2. And these are smaller counties. And there's a total of 9 that would have a 4% difference if option 2 it would be reduced by that 4%. So I'm leaning for option 1.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Tellez, what are your thoughts on it?
You know, when I start thinking about the rescue funding, and I look at, there was funding that was provided 12 months of the year, not just 8. It wasn't like they didn't receive anything. By any chance, David, can you share with us some of the numbers for the 3 counties that would benefit?
I assume you were asking about what the amount they got for rescue funding for the 3 counties that I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
So I looked up this was the fiscal year 1920. So this was March. Very little bit of rescue funding went out in March because that was the beginning of the pandemic. And then April, May, and June, I looked at the amount that that Miami got during those 3.5 months in essence. Total was about, I think about 825,000. Broward did not draw down any except for like just a nominal amount in June. They started drawing down more rescue funding at the newer the following fiscal year, but it wasn't until after this performance period. And then Palm Beach had about 462,000 as I calculated. That they received in rescue funding. And again, those systems, I mean, we did rescue funding across the state. It wasn't just those counties. But the bus passes, I think particularly we learned contributed largely. And again, it was because those fares were told, those systems were told not to charge fares. So that just explains why those systems may have gotten more in rescue funding than some of the others, but we did implement that statewide. That wasn't meant just for bus passes, that was across the state.
Okay, so that being said, I feel like with my other commissioners, that option 1 would benefit more counties than just the 3. I mean, just the overall numbers. So option one.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tellez. So just to kind of put it in perspective, the staff had recommended option 2, but I mean, that's what we're here for, to listen and think and process and all those types of things. And again, I could kind of go either way on this one, but I could agree with all the commissioners on their perspectives as well. So in order to move forward with this vote, given that the governor, these are projections, governor's got to sign the budget and we've got to lock down the numbers, but this is part of the timetable process. I would need one of the commissioners to make a motion to either adopt option 1 or option 2 for the utilization of data. Again, not touching the formula, just which data we use. So I need a commissioner to make that motion.
This is Commissioner Gray. I'll make a motion to adopt option 1.
Okay. Commissioner Gray has made the motion to adopt option 1. Can I have a second? Anyone second that motion?
Commissioner Knight seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Knight. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of adopting option 1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? With that, then the motion passes to adopt option 1. Okay, and again, it's one of those discussions that we could carry on for a long time, but I do appreciate the comments of Mr. Eastberg that there's going to be other events that the commission needs to take into consideration for things like rescue funding and those sorts of things. So it's probably good for us to have that conversation, Director Darm, on how we may prepare better, for these types of things, if this is going to be part of the new normal in our budgeting processes and things of that nature. So just maybe a follow-up item. So this concludes the action items for this meeting. We'll now move on to the informational items. And with that, Director Darm will provide a report on the commission's legislative activities as well as other upcoming initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I forgot to mention, I'm glad you said projections. I had forgotten to mention, to circle back one last thing on the projections. I want to emphasize that we've still got the Census Bureau. I think one of the public commenters made that remark about we still got the census data that we need to update in there, but that data should not be dramatically changing the allocations that much. We've also doing a little bit of auditing on our invoice data just to be sure that we're not missing something. Again, the kinds of changes that would see that if these little bits of changes, they shouldn't alter the allocations dramatically. But of course, what we'll do is once we've gotten the final projections, we will send that out, and it shouldn't take too long. Is my hope. We should be able to get that out very, very soon, in time for folks who need their budgets to start going through their local process. And of course, I will share that with you all commissioners as well, so you can have that, for your reference when we get them finalized. Okay, so now going into the legislative wrap up, guys, I'm going to tell you personally, this was a challenging year, a challenging session. I can speak on my behalf and my staff's behalf. We've worked very, very hard this year to try to meet, some resolution to this budget challenges that we talked a lot about at the last commission meeting. Now, though we did not get exactly what we asked for, we originally asked for $10 million of additional budget authority. We got $6 million, which is still a win. And I think it also we have learned, I can speak confidently, that the commission staff have learned quite a lot about this process and knowing how to better communicate both with our legislative colleagues as well as communicating to our stakeholders. TD Day, I thought, was extremely successful and probably tilted the favor to getting us that additional $6 million this year, because we did have advocates that were engaged. It meant a lot to me to hear. I attended the FPTA board meeting right after our commission meeting the following day. I think it was February 17th, and heard a lot of positive feedback from the FPTA board members and others that I've talked with, saying that they appreciated the legislative flyer that we sent out to inform them and help coordinating the messaging. Again, our job is to being sure that everybody has information to understand an issue. We respect that our the legislature ultimately decides what's in the General Appropriations Act. But, we as the commission can provide information, but it's also our stakeholders' responsibility to also advocate for their interests, to also be able to weigh in this process. So we've learned quite a lot from it, and I think it's going to greatly impact the way we move forward with communication with our legislative, well, not just our legislative priorities, but on many of our policy issues. I can say personally, I feel strongly in the need of doing a more coordination of messaging, and just so that everybody can be able to understand what the policy impacts are to our various programs. Of course, the big one being the trip and equipment grant. That's the primary engine of our funding. So as I mentioned earlier, we got $2 million for the trip and equipment grant, which we just discussed. We also got $4 million for our innovative service development grant. So we're in the process now of getting ready to announce the application process. I'm hoping that we can do that this week. We're working right now on the application manual and trying to get that out as soon as possible. I'll go ahead and forewarn you, commissioners, that we will be planning to meet in June. We will need to have an additional commission meeting on that grant program. The reason why is because that innovation grant, we have heard a lot of feedback over the last few years that there was a need for longer time to develop proposals. And although we have been giving everyone a heads up that this was probably going to happen, we still want to give enough sufficient time for systems to develop proposals and for the commission to review those proposals and provide sufficient recommendations on which ones to award. So we will be announcing those big dates coming up. We will also have, I'll get to in a minute, public workshops on that as well, that will help our applicants learn what the expectations are, to try to be, trying to be as helpful and technical assistance as we can provide. Okay, I think that's the end of the legislative part. The other activities we've got, as I mentioned, the ISD grant. We're going to do 2 public workshops around that. We've got the first one planned for March 31st. So next week, really, that's not a lot of time, but don't worry, we're going to have plenty of time to discuss this. We're going to have like I said, we're going to have 2 workshops on this issue. So the first one is scheduled. The second one we will probably hold towards the last week or so before the deadline. Again, these workshops are really intended to be training opportunities, an opportunity for questions and answers, on what the expectations are. I forgot to mention it was in the slide, but we also have some limitations on where that funding can be used for, which we will explain in more detail in those workshops. We're also still in the process of doing a redesign of our AOR, annual operating report. We had to put the pause button. There have just been so many irons in the fire with our legislative priorities and this ISD grant that we haven't had much time to do much on the AOR yet, but we do have a plan about how to investigate that, and we still got 3.5 months to do. We're under contract with Thomas Howell to do some studying on that. So we will keep you guys posted as we go into that, but we would like to hopefully have a workshop before the end of June on that topic as well. But the big news I want to share is for our May Commission meeting. Now, Commissioner Stevens mentioned, Chairman Stevens mentioned that we are expecting reappointments and appointments of new commissioners. So by the May Commission meeting, we anticipate we will have at least a couple new board members. as well as we'll have, we may have some new staff, or at least one new staff person potentially. And we'll also have, I know that we also have a lot of new people in our system out there who are trying to learn. So we decided, we felt as staff that it would be important to bring the commission together beyond just a commission meeting in Stewart, which we are scheduled to do in May, but also to hold a vision summit. And what our goal would be like to have is that a part of the vision summit would be an orientation of the TD program. This would be a chance for new commissioners and new staff and other new stakeholders who are coming into our system, publicly available to attend and listen to, basically an overview of the TD program, overview of our grants. We should have a discussion on the Sunshine Law as well. For those who are not familiar with government in the sunshine, we will provide an overview of that as well. But then the second part of the Vision Summit, we would also like to open as a dialogue session with our stakeholders, particularly our CTCs, planners, who are, expected to not only implement our programs, but also, seeing the issues, seeing the concerns, seeing the challenges. We have heard a lot about driver shortages and staff shortages and workforce challenges, which is not unique to our industry. We're hearing that across the country, and it's a problem with a lot of industries. But there are other challenges, that we would like to explore. It doesn't mean that the commission can solve all these challenges. We are both a funder of transportation and a coordinator of transportation. And to really truly understand how we can elevate the TD program to continue to be a national leader, we want to be able to start by getting really getting into deeper into these challenges and hearing from the stakeholders. So relatively soon, we will be giving out more information on that, including what to expect on that for discussion items for that. The intention would not be that the Vision Summit is a commission action. There would be no votes taken during the summit itself. However, we would like to hold it in conjunction with our regularly scheduled commission meeting on May 24th. So we haven't gotten the dates exactly secure, but we're thinking it would be probably the Monday, the day before the commission meeting scheduled, so May 23rd. But we still need to make sure we got secured the location and all that.
Director Dharma, a question, real quick, clarifying on the ISD grant and the Vision Summit, were those being held live and virtually or just virtually?
Very good question. For the workshops, all of that's going to be held. You're talking about for the June commission meeting for the ISD grant?
So I'm talking about, you got the March 31st meeting, the ISD grant application, the training workshop.
That will be virtual.
The Vision Summit, yeah.
Right. Thank you for clarifying. So the workshops will be virtual. The Vision Summit we want to have in person. I cannot say yet whether we want to do a virtual option for the summit. Frankly, if it was up to me personally, my recommendation would we're going to try to get a location that's big enough for people to space out. We understand that, the health concerns, but we really I think that this would be much more impactful to be in person. You just don't get the candor and the well, it doesn't really work for me being visually impaired, but a lot of others have told me body language is also important when listening, not just the verbal language. So we really, really want to make every concerted effort to make that Vision Summit be in person. It's not to say that we're not open to a virtual option, but we think the best benefit that would be gained for all participants would be to do that in person the best we can.
Okay, thank you. To clarify.
Yeah, and then I mentioned the appointments. We've got a rider stakeholder relations subcommittee that we've had on that we've established for now a little while, but we haven't really been able to do much because of other priorities. We're wanting to pick that back up again. Our staff are doing some partnership with the Department of Transportation. Very appreciative of the department lending us their communications team to help us think through some communication strategies on how we can increase awareness of the TD program. Commissioner Gray is the chair of that subcommittee, and we're hoping that we can bring that subcommittee back to meet back again virtually in April. Our staff right now are doing some brainstorming sessions, I think we would like to call that, with the communication staff at FDOT to kind of just think through who our target audience is, identify where they're getting their information, or where we can be increasing our presence, whether it's online, like website information that we give out, connection with other partnerships, like what the other agencies post about our program. And then potentially, I get hesitant when I say this because I know that there's risks involved, but possibly even a social media presence. I know we had a few years ago under my predecessor, we did do some social media. However, with our current staff resources, we don't have really a lot of dedicated time to manage that at the current juncture, but we're going to explore it again and see if that is something that's worth it. And of course, we would bring all of those strategies to the subcommittee for consideration, and then eventually, bring that as a report to the full commission. So we're looking forward to that. I think there's a lot of positive traction that came out of our brainstorming session with our staff about some ideas that we can explore, creative ideas we can explore. And then finally, one last thing to talk about with y'all. This is the year of growth for the TD program. We're going to continually say that. This is actually going to be a huge theme of the conference in August. We want to challenge our systems to grow their knowledge, to grow, expand the way that they explore strategies, especially with the current environment that we're in. To be quite frank with you all, we're not, nobody expected the pandemic. It's completely changed the dynamics of what a workforce looks like, how we communicate, how we go and interact in public, and it really affects the way, when we have systems and strategies that have been built in place for 40 years or so, it makes us reevaluate: are these strategies still working, or do they need to be adjusted? And so growth is kind of the theme that we're gonna really hit on, especially at the conference, because what we want to do is grow the knowledge, grow the skills of our systems workforce to meeting the service demands. The state of Florida is growing. The population's growing. The Commissioner Knight mentioned we have a growing senior population that will be likely to be eligible for these services. So it's incumbent upon our systems, our leaders. This is a call to action to particularly our systems leaders. And I'm talking about executive directors, advocates, people who are very vocal and attend our meetings, attend our conferences. We cannot as a commission do this by ourselves. This is a rally call for us to be proactive, not reactive to these challenges. So I'm giving you a teaser, because each meeting we have leading up to the conference in August, we will reveal a little bit more each time. We're going to kind of give you guys a little bit of some teaser trailers, but when you come into the conference, get ready, get excited, because we're going to have quite a lot. I'm probably making our team nervous because we're still in the planning process of that conference, but I'm feeling extremely optimistic about the themes and the goodwill that's going to be carried into the conference to try to grow and expand our potential into the next 10 years. So more to come, but those are basically my overview from my report. And if you have any questions, happy to answer.
All right, any questions for Director Dahm? If not, we'll move on in the agenda. Any commissioners and or advisors have any reports? And I'll just go through the list. Commissioner Gray, any reports? Commissioner Knight, any report?
No reports, thank you.
Okay. Dr. Chalez, anything extra to add?
No reports.
Liz or Krista or Ken?
This is Liz. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to share that DOT has started the public workshops for both our implementation plan for the Florida Transportation Plan, our rail plan and passenger rail strategy, and our transit strategy. So you all should be receiving invites to those sessions. We would love to have you join us and give us your impressions of the strategies that we're proposing. And then also exciting news out of our office, we've instituted a new weekly newsletter that is a collection of transportation articles from around the country that we share with our district offices, and then our district offices share with the CTCs and other transportation providers in their area. So thank you for giving me the time to let you know what exciting things we have going on.
Thanks, Liz. A couple of questions. The newsletter, how do we get on that distribution list? And then secondly, the workshops, are they going to be live in Tallahassee, across the state, or are they going to be virtual?
Okay, so first with the newsletter, you can send me your email address, or you can reach out to the folks at the District 7 headquarters and they can get you on the list. Okay. The workshops are around the state. There is a workshop in Jacksonville on, I believe it's March 29th. There's a workshop April 5th or 6th in Lakeland. And then the following day at the Longwood Community Building. And then the following week, there are workshops in Fort Myers and Aventura. And then we finish up with a workshop in Mariana in April.
Okay.
But there are mailers going out on all of those dates and times. Okay. And they will all be in person. We had a webinar kickoff yesterday, and we will have a closing webinar at the end.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other advisors? Krista or Ken, if you're still on, any other reports?
This is Krista with the Department of Elder Affairs, and we have nothing to report today.
Thank you, Krista. All right. Okay. So if there's no additional reports from commissioners or advisors, we'll now hold the second public comment segment agenda. Again, on this one, the speakers are welcome to discuss any topic. Again, give your name, organization you represent, and county of residence, and that you will be limited to 5 minutes. I do not have any cards at this point in time. Director Darm, do you have any cards?
No.
Okay. With that, we'll move to the webinar. I've not gotten any indication on the chat box of anyone wishing to speak, but I'll open up the webinar and or the phone lines. Remember to hit *6 to unmute if you have a desire to make a public comment at this time. Okay, hearing none. Also, I did want to recognize, as far as the attendance, our council, Rochelle Munson, she was on the phone, but was struggling to unmute, but she did make a point of sending a note that she is in attendance. So I want to make sure that the records indicate that.
Thank you.
Yes, all right. This concludes our business meeting. We want to thank everyone who participated. Again, the major action item were the two options, and we extended it, a while so that people had a chance to look into more. So I appreciate everyone taking the time and quite honestly, the energy and the effort and the concern to look at it and not just, pass it off. And the commissioners too. I mean, our job is to look at these things and, with the assistance of Director Darm and staff and move items forward as we see appropriate to, represent the citizens of Florida that we're representing here. So appreciate the effort and the passion and the energy there. It's not the last word. We just, there'll be another issue tomorrow. So just regroup and refresh, and we'll move on and to the next challenge as it comes up. The next meeting is going to be in May 24th, as Director Dar mentioned, and Stuart will confirm that date. That may move a day or so. We'll send out announcements on other things. We talked about the Vision Summit, some of those other things in the next few weeks. With that, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I motion to adjourn the meeting. Tellez.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. Can I get a second for that motion?
Commissioner Knight seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Knight. With that, all those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. If not, thank you very much. This concludes our CTD business meeting. Have a great afternoon.